afternoon. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you today to really talk about a topic that is very trendy and important in the United States. I am so honored to be with my compatriotas from Cuba. We each have a different story, and we're going to tell the world what that story is like and leave a little legacy for the people that are interested in hearing what it means to be all equal. So my name is Marilyn Ehrhardt. I am a global management consulting executive for technology. I'm also an author and a business coach. What I want to talk a little bit about is what's the journey that the DEI concept traversed through the years and how I got caught up in that journey very early in my life. And then we're going to share how Luis and Otto also traversed that journey in their life. I don't know if some of you remember or know, or through your history classes. In 1920, Vladimir Lenin rose in power during the Communist Revolution in Cuba. And by 1922, Joseph Stalin, the country became a major nightmare. Okay, so that was the beginning of that concept from Marxists that everybody's equal. The consequences were catastrophic: famine, millions of deaths, rationing, confiscation of property, brutality, and economic collapse. Despite that example, people continue to push that ideology forward. And the foundation of Marxism continue to grow in the Communist Manifest. Further than that, from that, we got what it was called the critical theory that emerged. And today, in the 21st century, the principles of the critical theory have been rebranded and repackaged into the DEI initiative. My story, I will make it short, but I just want to point to what happens when government and politics and false ideology fall into the people that do not know what are the impact of those ideologies to human beings. Definitely, we're not all equal. Each one of us has a very, very unique DNA. And the fact that the DEI wants to make everybody equal based on your color, the color of your skin, or based on where you come from and your ethnicity and all of that, contradicts the original design of creation. I was born in 1954, just a year after Stanley's death, into a world struggling with the global spread of Marxism all over the place. The critical theory, amazingly enough, was developed in Germany. And in 1930 was the first transgender surgery that took place. I think in Cuba, the university elites like Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, and Camilo Cienfuegos, they were inspired by the Marxist utopian ideas and initiated the Communist Revolution in 1959, when my life was forever changed. Imagine a 5-year-old little girl coming from middle class in a free country, and certainly everything changes and everything stops. Food rationing all over the place. We had to carry a booklet to buy food, and that food only lasts for 2 weeks. The rest, we had to survive. Constant surveillance. The government spies monitor every aspect of our life, what we said, what we did, and even brought into our home. Suppression of faith. Attending church was forbidden, forcing people to practice their religion in secret. Remember going to my friend's house for prayer. Forced labor camps. That was the worst. Children, including myself, were sent to agricultural labor camps for 3 months a year to be indoctrinated by the communist government. We worked hard, 9 to 5 in the fields, and then in the evening we were indoctrinated. The moral decay around us was scary, being a young girl, 11, 12, 13. I witnessed friends engaged in casual sex and undergoing multiple abortions at that age, all approved by the communist government. So in order to everybody be equal, we had to suffer all these things. It was a lot to give up. It was my reality growing up. But thank God that in response of the suffering in Cuba, the United States established the freedom flights, offering asylum to Cubans fleeing the regime. My mother, a widow, had the courage to take us out that nightmare. It took us 5 years to apply and come here legally, an exile. A lot of people talk very lightly about exile, but exile is not the same like I don't like my country and I'm going to go to another country for better opportunities. When you're an exile and a refugee, you don't have the ability to go back to that country. So you lose everything everything that was familiar to you, you lose it. Your friends, your family, your house, your language, your culture, everything. And my mom and I landed when I was 14 years old in Pan American airline flight. I never forget that. And the Liberty Building in Miami, which every time I pass by there, I remember my story. And it was like a bittersweet experience. Bitter because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I had no idea of my future. And sweet because I know one thing for sure: when I landed on that Liberty Tower, I was free. And that was the beginning of my story in the United States. In 1970, I attended school in Miami, and a lot of people, when I talk about this, don't believe that this is true, but there were no Cubans in my high school in Miami. Most of the people in that school were Jewish people. And I did not speak a word of English either. So how did I go through high school was very, very difficult. My mother and I worked hard to survive. I bagged groceries while attending high school, and my mother worked as a babysitter, house cleaner, and an office cleaner. There was no welfare at that time, and there was no food stamp, there was no Section 8, and there was no healthcare. And that's how we survived. How do we survive? Working very, very hard to support one another with the vision and the dream that this country had all the elements and the freedom for us to achieve our dreams. I worked very hard during college too. I worked full-time in South Central Bell. They paid for my college education, and I was able to get an engineering and computer science degree. Now, you say, well, what do? You graduate from college, you got your degree, and my dream was to work for NASA. It was always my dream. I love science, I love physics, and mostly I love to get close to the perfect creation of this world. And I applied in NASA. There were 1,000 applications there. I have an accent. I still have it. At that time, it was heavier than this. And I had very good grades from my college education and a huge passion for my dream. And everybody told me I was not going to get hired by NASA. And I said, I have nothing to lose. And I went through the process. The HR person told me, I'm giving you the job because you're great and because of your passion for NASA. I know you're not going to fail. From there, I became a global executive for the top technology companies in the world. I found my own business, Savianet, in 2000. And by 2009, I became an entrepreneur and published 3 books, and all achieved without a single DEI DEI program in the journey. Not one. What did I have in my backpack? How did you succeed, Marilyn? Well, I had an incredible mother, for sure. I had deep passion for my dreams. I have faith, resilience, merit, and character. Those were my tools in my backpack and continue to be my tools till the end of my life. So for me, basically, my life story is a proof that success is not achieved through government programs making everybody equal, or ideologies, initiatives that really do not work with our original design. It is achieved through hard work, resilience, faith, and character. So from there, I'm going to take off to Otto, and we begin the conversation between all of us. So Otto, how were you when you live in communist Cuba?
So first, let me thank you, Marilyn, for the opportunity to share this space with you and to share my story and some of my thoughts and beliefs around the topic that we're discussing today. So I remember vividly my time in Cuba. I left when I was almost 9 years old. I was born in 1971. 1971 in communist Cuba was probably I would say the epic time for the revolution for them there. And I would see how my mother and father had to go about daily life and the rest of my family. I lived in a house where my grandparents lived, my uncle and my aunt lived, and my mother and my father and my cousins. So we all lived in the same house. And we all lived in the same house because there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for new families to acquire housing. Housing was limited. And as you explained, so were a lot of the other factors of daily living. So, you know, just something as simple as acquiring groceries were rationed, and you had to go through a system. And that system led to basically having food being very scarce and folks having to do whatever it took to go around that particular system to gain access to, nutrition that they needed for daily living. Because one of the things when you mentioned food rationing, one of the things that I remember vividly were the fact that they would only give you maybe 6 eggs for the whole month per person, maybe a pound of rice or a pound of beans for the whole month per person. So I remember the communist system and the elites there making the rules as they went along. One of those rules was part of this diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is nothing more than a cloak under the guise of compassion and equality. It's just a cloak to be able to control people and to give them a false sense of unity, because they know that if a person has an innate sense of personality, an innate sense of being able to have individualism, then they no longer control that person.
Right.
So those are things that they did very, very quickly in the onset of the revolution to start establishing, like what you mentioned, some of the patterns that they learned, that Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos and all the other revolutionaries learned through the Marxist teachings and the teachings of Lenin from Russia. All that is nothing more than again it comes under the guise of compassion. It comes under the guise of inclusivity and being sensitive for everyone else. But really, all it is a method to control.
I think that is absolutely the truth. And it's interesting. I was able to live a little bit the freedom of capitalism and then face this disaster of communism and equality. You were born in that abusive government. You didn't know as a little boy what was different. And it is amazing how, as you continue to grow in those kind of governments, you don't know the truth. You don't know what reality is. And the government, the elites, and the people that are in power will continue to go in that direction so the population does not know what freedom is. How about you, Luis? Tell me, how old were you when you were in Cuba?
Hi, Marilyn. Hi, Otto. Marilyn, so thankful for allowing me to participate in this webcast and share some of our experience. I left Cuba, was around 13 years old. Of course, born in Cuba in 1965 in the middle of communism and all the craziness was there. My story is very similar to Otto and yourself. I actually live very close to Otto. We met here in the United States not long ago, but we live in the same town in Cuba, and I left pretty much the Spanish government sent 2 airplanes to Cuba to pick up the last of Spanish citizens left there. My dad was Spaniard, my grandparents. Literally, the only ones born in Cuba was myself, my sister, and my mom, but everybody else was Spaniard. So they came to the house. Everything happened very fast. They knocked the door, and then all the process started where you pack 2-3 liter plastic bags or whatever you have. And then the Cuban Gestapo come to the house and embarrass you and humiliate you as much as they can, and they inspect everything down to every broken plate that it was there, because all they're showing is not the broken plates that my parents bought through their hard work and effort, but it belonged to the government. Yeah.
And it's interesting that the 3 of us came in different ways, right? I came on the freedom flights. You were recovered back by your ancestors to Spain, and you were very blessed by that. But I think Otto in the middle had a very interesting experience, and it was called the Mariel evacuation of Cuba. Tell us a little bit about the Mariel, Otto.
So it's funny you mentioned that as a funny experience, and I keep wanting to tie into how history repeats itself, right? Like I said, I was born in 1971, and that was the kind of the highlight or the peak of their power. But as with any totalitarian regime, and as with any social communist dictatorship, they start to run into situations where they run out of people to take stuff away from, right? And then now they have to really compete in the world economy against other nations with a capitalist system, and so they start to have to delineate themselves from a system that doesn't work to a system that somehow they have to make work. So one of the things that Fidel Castro did at the time was he realized that there was this bubbling effect of anti-communist, anti-Fidel regime society trend sort of brewing up. So what does he do? He actually takes advantage of a situation where a couple of initial boats were leaving Cuba, where family members were kind of going to pick them up because the regime was actually having trouble with this whole rationing system. People were starting to protest. So there was a rebellion was starting to brew up. So he took advantage of this, and he opened immigration. He basically opened the doors for anyone who wanted to leave Cuba. There was a catalyst event, and that was that the Peruvian embassy at the time said, we'll take anyone that wants to leave Cuba and we'll welcome them into Peru. The embassy opened their doors, and what happened next was something completely unexpected, even to the Peruvian embassy and even to the Peruvian government, is that I think over 39,000 people flooded the embassy gates and went in there. Wow. And were huddled up in there for a very long time. That led to what was called the Mario boat lift. So a lot of families saw opportunities to go pick people up, and they initiated these, boat missions or these vessel missions to go into Cuba and to pick their family members up. So around that time, a couple of priests from the Episcopal Church, the Archdiocese in New Orleans, Louisiana, sort of started to, get donations from family members so that they can buy a vessel and go pick up family members in Cuba. And so that's kind of how my story unfolds, where these two priests, they buy this vessel somewhere up in Boston. They navigate it around a Coast Guard blockade. They get to Cuba and they negotiate 407 people to come onto this boat. But what was happening at that time, like every regime is happening, like what's happening now with some of these totalitarian regimes, is that like the Maduros of this world and like the Ortegas of this world, they open their prisons up and they open their, I hate to repeat some of the stuff, some of the rhetoric, but they do open up these mental institutions and they start letting people out. And they start letting people out because there's obviously an opportunity to come to the United States. So what Castro did at that time is, for every family member that you were willing to, that you wanted to take on your vessel, you had to take on a prisoner, what he called political prisoner, but they weren't political prisoners. They were everyday thugs and thieves at the time. So that's what created the Mario boat lift. 110,000 plus Cubans came at one time in a span of 2.5 months, completely flooded the infrastructure in Miami. And because of that, since we were towards the end of the Mario boat lift, we landed in Key West, and the authorities in Key West put us on an airplane to a refugee camp in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. So I went from Havana to having to cross the Florida Straits for about 20 plus hours under heavy seas, to then arriving in Key West and being shipped to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, up at close to the Canadian border. And
how old were you on that boat?
I was 8.5 years old.
8.5 years old. And guess what? It is amazing how things happen, because you were taking care at that time of my son's grandmother, who my son had not been born yet. But his grandmother was in that boat, and you, that young, were taking care of her.
Yeah, so I remember getting her a cape, because these are Cubans that had never been on a regular fair ride, much less a boat going up and down on 20 foot plus waves for about 13 plus hours, making that Florida Strait crossing. So, you can imagine everyone was seasick and everyone was kind of, trying to manage that situation. And it was rainy as well. So I found her a cape. I got her a cape. I got her a few blankets. She was by herself. And from the moment that we started to have issues at sea and I was able to move a little bit, I remember saying, wow, I have to take care of this elderly lady, because she was just sitting there alone by herself. And from that moment, we took her under our wing, and it wasn't just me, it was my mother and my father, and we took her under our wing all the way to when you picked us up from the refugee camp in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin.
And the other thing that happened to you that I think is very interesting, how many years after that same priest married you?
Yeah, so it's a funny story, full circle, and I know it's deviating away a little bit from the message, but It's actually
it can tell you what happens when you're on the right track, doing the right thing.
Right,
Things
right.
unfold your way, right?
I call my life God's plan. So I just
It
go.
is God's plan.
Just go by God's plan, and I question it because I'm human, but at the end of the day, it's a perfect plan, and it's His plan. But so 1980, that priest, when he drops us off in Key West and he's helping people off, he gives my mother a Bible and he signs it for her and he says, "Take care of this Bible. This is going to give you solace, and it's going to answer a lot of questions for you in your moments of deepest doubt." So my mom took the Bible, and we obviously we went on to do our lives, and we'll get on to a little bit about the development of my career and so on and so forth in a minute. But I was 9.5 years old, and in 2012, when I decided to get married with a wonderful woman who finally convinced me to go down that path, I started looking for places to get married at. And I went to the Spanish monastery here in Miami, Florida, and they're giving me a tour. And I'm asking the lady, "Hey, who owns this place? Because I want to rent out the whole place." And she tells me the Episcopal Church owns this place, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" An Episcopal Church priest was the one who brought me from Cuba. And long story short, she was like, "Oh my gosh," she was shocked when I told him who he was. I said, "Leo Frade," and she goes, "He's my boss. He's in charge of this whole place." And we scheduled a meeting with him. He was so happy to see us. His secretary was crying. It was a very emotional meeting. And my mother brought to that meeting the Bible that he signed for her. Some 32 years. Before, and she brought the newspaper clippings of pictures of him, of the voyage, and it was a very emotional, meeting. And he married me 32 years later after he brought me from Cuba to the United States as a young boy.
Amazing grace.
He was the one.
That was amazing grace. Now we get you got my story. I had a straight flight to Miami. Ended up in New Orleans. That was another experience, but a lot easier than your Otto. But then Luis, he thought he had it easy, right? Spain said, "Hey, your grandparents are from Spain and everybody else, come back." But for some reason, he has to go back to get out of Spain. His parents had to. And then he ended up in Puerto Rico. So Here we are, 14, 8. And how old were you? 13, Luis, right?
Yeah. When I left the island, when I left Cuba, I was 13. One thing to mention is, and I was listening to Otto, what an incredible story. And I hear, every time I hear another Cuban talking about stories, more overwhelming, and there's always a connections, But one thing I want to reemphasize when Otto was talking about the DEI, they really tried to drive DEI in Cuba. In fact, it was called forced labor camp for kids. I went for a forced labor camp when I was 11 and a half years old. And they used to send all these kids there to work, starting 5 in the morning to like 6 plus at night under the sun. I saw kids collapsing. I saw kids dying. I saw and I hear girls screaming, being raped day after day after day. I got beat up. I got tortured like many other ones. I survived, one of the ones that survived. But the age of these kids in there were age, 12, 13, 14, and then the people that used to take care of all of us was people between, ages of 20 and 25, totally mature, communist animals that were there just to abuse the kids. So at that same time, I got drafted in the military service, and my parents now got really scared because at that point, it's either they leave and I stay or nobody leave. And that's when the Spanish embassy went to look for people there, jumped in an airplane and landing in Spain. And what a shock that was. So Here, I remember, I'm standing in the middle of the street, in the middle of a plaza, holding my sister's hand, and we're just looking around to all this world moving around us, cars, roads that are clean and no holes, and people that look at you and smile and say hi instead of calling you names because you didn't think like they did. And then trying to assimilate this word called freedom that we never knew what it was. I mean, we were born on the communist regime that, and very interesting, everybody there experienced DEI except the 1% of them. 1% of the communists, they didn't go by those laws. They didn't abide to those laws or anything else. They kept everybody poor in the same level and dying at the same level while they became rich and live life like kings. And it still happened today. And that beginning, like you mentioned, back in the Lenin times, it hasn't changed. It's the human DNA, But, arrived to Spain, and then a lot of family there, wonderful. You get to meet my grandparents were 14 brothers and sisters on each side, just behind the size of the family. And meeting all these great people, meeting my grandparents again. My grandfather was member of a CIA in Cuba, and he got caught and tortured, and then finally they pulled it out. So many years later, I get to see him again. And but one thing was interesting. My dad was Spanish citizen. He actually died as Spanish citizen with Spanish passport, but he was not allowed to work on his own country in Spain. He was just not allowed to work because they told him that he was for too long outside the country.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That was a rule there in Spain at that time.
Yeah, not allowed to work. And then we survived with family help. We lived with family. My dad had savings, and also with my grandfather. At that time, my grandfather, for the same reason, he moved to Puerto Rico, and at a very old age, he restarted his own business and became successful again. Then my dad and my mom and my sister and I moved to Puerto Rico because my dad could not find any other source of employment in Spain. And then the island of Puerto Rico welcomed us with the open arms, same as the United States. And I remember the first thing that my dad was offered was welfare. And he looked at it and he asked, what is that? Because he couldn't understand what is welfare. And I explained, we're going to give you this check, we're going to give you this money, housing, this and that. And he said, no. You already gave me what I needed, the freedom to start a new life.
Amen. And
he did. And, start a new business with my grandfather. And here's this both of them with two kids, now one 14, the other one 11, my sister, starting from the bottom up again. And these were a very successful family in Cuba, very well set, with their own businesses and everything else. They lost absolutely everything, like all the other Cubans did. So I started again. But the emphasis in my house was education. He said, it was very simple rules. Get an education.
Yes. Education is the main thing.
Study, learn, work hard, and in this country you will make it. And that was the path that we followed. That was the gospel, And talking about the gospel, living in Cuba, we used to go to church. My sister and I, with a lady that was like our grandmother at the time, I could not go with my parents because if we went as a family, we would get beat up. We were accused of people that believe in this strange doctrine called Christianity, because atheism was atheism.
Yes, for sure.
So I never got a chance to go with my parents to church, but I did go to church. When in church everybody was like you and Otto, myself. We all have one common thing is to help each other, to believe in God, and to be free. And I got to tell you, that was the best church I've ever been in my entire life.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 challenges, just the top 3, that you had to overcome when you landed in the United States?
Well, the first one was assimilating a whole new culture. I didn't speak any English, nothing. I couldn't understand anybody.
Yes.
So a new culture, and knowing that and accepting that I'm not going back to my country. I lost it. It's over. For us, Cuban is not such a thing like let's go back home. The moment we cross, the moment Otto jump in that boat and we jump in airplanes, all it is look back and that's it. It's over. So that was the first part. The assimilation. It's overwhelming. It's always all you're saying going around you is totally new. The second one, I think, is assimilating that I'm free. This freedom that it was taken away. All of a sudden, you starting to, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I go to school? Can I go to school I want? Can I actually, go outside in the street and play without somebody trying to do something to you, negative, usually, And I would say the last one was, I don't know how to put this one, but the last one was probably learn to charge on my own. And what I mean charge on my own is start a life on my own and my past and my goals. In Cuba, and you hear from Otto, we stopped being kids at age 8. Age 8 is over. You're no longer a kid. You're there trying to form yourself as a man or a woman and fight against the system as a very rebellious kid. So I got beat up every possible way they could, but I never fall to that country. So now I'm here in a position where I tend to look at the big picture and say, I can really be whatever I want. So now putting this plan in front of me, the school I wanted to go, then the career I want to pursue, the job I want to do. This was, I could see very young in my life this path because this amazing country gave us that opportunity. So to me, it was a challenge.
You had a vision and you executed on the vision because you had all the freedom to execute on that vision.
Exactly.
What were the top 3 challenges for you, Otico, when you arrived here?
So, obviously the language was, I would say, that the main challenge. I remember someone gifted me an American Heritage Dictionary, and I still have it to this day. It's all beat up, but I still have it because it was my first Google Translator.
That's it. That's funny.
It was my Google Translator at the time. So anytime someone would say something, that I would just reach for my American Heritage Dictionary and look the word up and get the translation and then figure out how to pronounce it. There was no ESL program in New Orleans at that time because there were practically the only Hispanics that were there were from Central America, and they were kind of dispersed all over the place. But for the most part, it was Americans and white Anglo-Saxons and
Cajuns.
And Cajuns, right? which pronounce things a lot different. So
that's a different English altogether.
Right. The language was one. The culture was obviously the culture, and the food was a second one that was very impactful. But the third one, and to allude to sort of what kind of Lewis touched on, was to be faced with the fact that you're no longer from where you came from because you can't go back, but you're also not from the United States either. So you're sort of in this universe of in-betweens.
Yes.
Where you don't want to lose your identity because your roots and your soul is kind of tied to the identity and your roots. And there's a lot of very, good quality things about our roots, but you have to assimilate to the United States and you have to assimilate to the American way of being. Otherwise, you cannot forge ahead. Because if you start to kind of bring that with you, and you use, you kind of carry as a crutch, you're not going to be able to forge ahead, because this is a system of creating value. And unless you create value in this capitalist system, you can't really forge ahead. I remember early on being my parents' translator. So I had to translate for everything from purchasing food to purchasing, domestic goods. I remember I distinctly, this is a very funny story, but this is our first Christmas in the United States, and we went to a store by the name of Woolworth. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all
Remember that.
I remember this Woolworth store. Right. And it was time to get a Christmas tree. And there were a bunch of Christmas trees set up from small, medium to large. Well, my parents, when they first came to the States, they worked for $3.35 an hour. And it was hard to make ends meet. So to tell my father that he all of a sudden had to spend money on a Christmas tree, which you couldn't eat and it was no good for shelter, was kind of against his plan of saving money and being able to make ends meet. So he went for the smallest one. But what he did was he unplugged the Christmas tree, which was all set up with all the ornaments and all the dressings and all the lights, and he just basically took that one to the cashier. Then the cashier was sitting there telling us, "Hey, no, you can't take that. You can't take that." And my dad says, "No, this is exactly the one I want. This is perfect." And I had to translate to him that he couldn't buy the display, that the price for the tree was just the tree, that he had to buy all the ornaments and all the other stuff, all the lights and everything else separate, and it was going to be now about 25 to 30% more than what he had anticipated spending. So that was a language and a culture shock at the same time, because in Cuba, you have something in display and that's what you buy. You basically put that display in your home because there's not a whole lot of inventory. Here, you have to go and you buy. They advertise one thing to catch you, but things are kind of there's a lot of hidden information. So that the culture, the language, and the identification were the three main challenges for me, Marilyn.
Yeah, for sure. And after going through that, I think it's very common. The language is the most critical one, but then being accepted by the culture and integrate to the culture, and then at the end, like living in that middle space, because you become like a citizen of the world,
right? More
than a citizen of a specific country.
Right.
And I went through those three things as well. So when you get to this country, and the three of us have this in common. We had a vision, and we didn't give up on that vision, and we used the education to get us to that vision. So the three of us went to college and got a college degree. Now, what are the three things that you had to overcome once you had your college degree to become successful? Let's start with Luis. What are the three things that you had to overcome when you got your college degree? So now you got your college degree.
Yeah, that's
be successful without DEI.
Yes, that's an excellent question, to be honest, because there's quite a bit of things we overcome, but we can narrow it down to a couple and to be reality. And I just want to mention one thing. Since I was probably 15 years old, I subscribed to a NASA, there was a NASA subscription. They used to send me pictures of all the planets and the space program, and I had hundreds of pictures of the space shuttle. Beautiful pictures. So to me, just like you, Marilyn, was a vision to become an engineer since very early life. Actually, since I was probably about 10 years old. But what to overcome? When you graduate from college, it doesn't matter how much you study, how hard it is. You don't know anything. You're so green that honestly, the people that give you a first job is because they saw something special in you. It's
Yes.
not because you're bringing absolutely nothing to the table. I have
Yes.
done that myself. I hire a lot of entry-level students. It's because I see them that they bring something to the table. But in average, it costs you $150,000 to $200,000 to properly train some engineer that come out of college extremely green.
Do you agree with me, Luis? Do you agree with me that when you get out of college with your degree, confidence is more important than competency?
Confidence is very strong. Believe in yourself. I had a lot of, I was rejected in a lot of interviews that I went. And some of them, the rejection was very professional, and some of them, the rejection was very arrogant, which the people that did it, the intent was to really, I don't know what the intent was, to be honest, because I've never done that. But I never give up. One thing that we learned, you look back in Cuba and you see the horrible life everybody had there. But we do learn one thing, or two things, I would say: to be extremely resilient, to not give up. My friends always joke, because I had a couple of say-sos around that, I always said, what he said, you never quit until the fat lady stops singing or whatever. I always say, there's no quitting in this thing. If my partner would have quit, I would have never been here. I would have probably been dead in Cuba, So I had a lot to go for it.
So yes. What you're saying is that one of the issues that you had to overcome was rejection.
Rejection, yeah. But we learned, being born in the system, we learned to be very resilient. One, and two, we learned to really appreciate this country and the opportunity it was giving, and the fact that we were free, and it's non-stop on this thing. It's only you if you stop. So in my DNA is just like Otto and Joseph. There's not such a thing we're going to stop. Oh, things are overwhelming. Oh, we got these rules or this stuff or these challenges. No, And no, it was no DEI or any of stuff. When I get hired, remember my first job, I was going to Florida Tech at that time, and I got a job. I applied to this job with Martin Marietta. I was a sophomore in college. So I go to the interview, and I'm sitting there with a whole bunch of students from MIT, Caltech, Georgia Tech, you can name it. I'm thinking and they all spoke English perfect. I was like Otto. I didn't speak English. I had a dictionary translating my engineering books to Spanish, back and forth, because my English was horrible, and reading, it's not just, it's reading, it's writing, it's speaking, but it's interpretation. We're translating, our minds translate from a language to another. I was translating across 3 languages and to figure these things out. So I knew in my mind, it's like, oh, this is going to be tough. And then I come back and told my roommates a story. I remember my roommate, Eric, he said, Luis, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. You're one of those guys that never stop. And the next day I got a call by the gentleman behind the people telling me I had the job. Boy, I was jumping. I jumped on my motorcycle the next day. And at 7:45, I was there at work. And then through the work, I was working with incredible engineers. One of them, his name was Dan DeFazio. I never forget him. My boss was Mr. Warland. The opportunity was getting amazing, working in Complex 41, rebuilding the launch pad for the Titan Centaur, which is the next rocket that it was going to be launching with the biggest payload in history at that time, the biggest rocket. And here I am with all these people rebuilding a pad that was closed many years before. And the experience was fascinating. But then eventually I asked this guy, what do you hire me? What exactly do you hire me? Because our competition was tough. And he said, well, I can hire a lot of people with a lot of book knowledge and a lot of, that they underestimated this job and what they've been giving to them, or I will hire somebody that appreciate tremendously the opportunity, that the fact that you didn't give up translating, books of 300 pages. I didn't think you were going to give up climbing towers here or doing the best, and indeed, I love to go to work every day. I used to go on a motorcycle, driving in A1A, all the way there. It used to take me about 40 minutes, rain, freezing, and it does freeze in Central Florida sometimes, heat, whatever. But what an incredible experience. An opportunity was given to me by this man because he didn't see on me, I was a sophomore, he didn't see on me a person bringing formulas or the design of the next electronic, because I didn't know anything. He only saw a person that has a track record of not giving up, and that's it.
Without any DEI program. At
Zero.
least that company didn't have to pay the HR person $300,000 to tell you that your color is important for that job.
Yes.
How about you? How about you, Otto?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very very similar story. I used my merit coming out of college. I graduated with top honors in college, and I remember being recruited by Caterpillar at that time, and they picked 8 people to go work for them out of maybe 300 or so people that were interviewed. And what I used in the interview process was just part of what I was taught throughout my entire life, which was to not necessarily pretend like I know everything, but definitely ensure that I was going to use my grit and resolve to make sure that, we got things completely done. And another thing that I used was one of the things that was a challenge early on, I turned it into a superpower. So that sort of lack of identity, because you're neither from there or from here, I used it as a superpower because now I can offer the company a sort of bridge, a cultural bridge and a language bridge between what they wanted to do in the Latin American region and what was happening in the US. So there was a Latin American market to be explored by Caterpillar at the time. They were having a lot of competition from a lot of the Japanese manufacturers, Komatsu and some of the others. And, I helped them go into Latin America. I then transitioned into the logistics aspect of it because we were moving stuff into Latin America. And this one company that we were moving stuff into Latin America for basically made me an offer that I could not refuse for the same reasons. So I used a lot of the stuff that was a challenge early on. I used it as my superpower.
That's a very good point. Use your challenge as your superpowers.
Right.
That is so well said.
Right. So and that, that was the challenge for me was basically how to harness that and how to exploit the one thing that I had. And it's one of the things that today I encourage, my peers and my employees to do, and where my sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion comes from is I'd like to diversify people's superpower and have multiple superpowers within the company. And
that's the truth.
And as far as the equity goes, the equity for everyone is equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, right? So I'd like everyone to have the same equal start, right? So my diversity is diversity of ideas and diversity of allowing people to bring out their own superpower. My equity is allowing everyone to have the same starting line, right? And from there on, the inclusion is, where's your value creation? And your value creation, it makes you that much more inclusive within the company and makes you have that upward mobility that we don't have in other countries.
Amazing. Yeah, it is. And I'm so, your story and Louis's story, and my story too, shows that it is very, very important to walk in that journey with those tools in your backpack. Very, very important. And I'm amazed how you went from college to that job in global logistic and distribution to your own company successfully, and one of the top entrepreneurs, not a social media entrepreneur, a real business entrepreneur around the world. Yeah. That was a Cuban refugee coming from Mariel that never lost hope and confidence and put his challenges into a super value. Yeah. And Luis is another one. I mean, I am so amazed with you, Luis, and I know we cannot talk about this in this conversation because it's private, but you got, I mean, I got to NASA. You got beyond NASA to one of the most important jobs in the United States, and you were one of the top engineers in AT&T. And the AT&T team, and from there you were a recognized engineer in the technology industry. And there you are, from college, you took also those challenges and put them in your backpack and said, I'm gonna achieve my dream. And that's what I want to leave behind to all the people that listen to this podcast, especially the new generation when they are really leaving college. And also to the immigrants, they have to have a different view. DEI is not your tool. Don't you think?
If I can give it, and I give this advice to every young person that interviews me or talks to me or whatever, that I have an opportunity to talk to, is I tell them early on, find your superpower, exploit that superpower, make sure that you harness the attention of potential mentors, okay? Right. And don't hide behind a crutch that, just because I am this particular skin color or because I come from this particular background, I don't necessarily, they're not going to hear me or they're not going to give me the same opportunity. The thing that I tell everyone, and this is my, I'll forever be on my soapbox telling everyone this, is that, I migrated to the United States. I'm a first generation immigrant. I lived in a government subsidized housing in New Orleans, Louisiana, which was not an easy place, but that allowed me to have a lot of the intricate knowledge that I have of people. So understand people, understand who you're dealing with, and understand that in a capitalist society, the only thing that matters is value creation. So if you can create value, it doesn't matter your skin color, it doesn't matter your background, it doesn't matter your gender. All that capitalism sees is value creation. Yes. And that's what I tell young people all the time.
Amen. Yes. Amen. How about you, Luis? What are your last words for our podcast?
The last words, it could be such a long word, but
you don't have a lot of time, so you gotta get down to 5 minutes.
Like Otto, one thing I want to add to Otto coming is surround yourself with people that are better than you.
That's a good one. That's a very good one.
And I was very blessed and very thankful in my career, to surround myself with people who were amazing, the best engineers, mentors, leaders in the industry that make you a lot better because they don't have any agendas, but just to be partners. I worked for extremely large companies, very complicated companies. I worked for, when I was working for AT&T, I became the youngest manager of a 110-year-old company at that time. I was 26 years old when they made me manager, and just because a couple of things. One, because my honesty, I was very honest, very upfront, very open to the people. I like to trust people, and people trust me. I was a very hard worker, and my education continued. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, which is not an easy deal. And at the same time, I graduated later on with a executive MBA from Centenary College, which is a program that goes with Stanford University. And that was very difficult to learn because now you're going from pure engineering to learn how to run companies. And from there, they made me a manager of a group in a company, a factory that was putting close to $2 billion in revenue and introducing products. Got to go all over the place. But the main thing behind that is just trust yourself completely. Trust that you're going to do it right. Trust that you are in a country that you have nothing but opportunities. You really don't need to depend on a check mark anywhere. In fact, that's a setback. The moment you start thinking that you're going to get to your opportunity because somebody's going to see you for the color of your skin, your sex, or anything like that, you're already lost. Because now you're depending, your entire success is depending on something that you cannot even understand. And I'll tell you, those people that came in 1620 from a boat from England here against all odds, I can guarantee you, there was nothing at that moment of DEI or anything helping them except their faith, their belief in God, and the fact that they were coming with a dream, and they did it. And today, that place that they call it the experiment, what a success story. And that success story is from people that came here to be free and to be empowered to do what they want. I learned, I can almost remember the moment in my life that my mind switched to say, I can do whatever I want. I just can.
Definitely. And I think that also, for me, when you say that, hang out with people that are above you, better than you, that have more knowledge than you, that you can learn from, that's very important. Because if you don't do that, how are you going to grow? Yes. How are you going to get to where you need to be? And being a woman and all these things about, women and men and this and that. Well, I started my career and my business career, when there were not any women around. It was all men. And I cannot say I had a single woman that was my mentor. I learned from men how to be a top executive. And we need to get that barrier down too. I learned, why? Not because I was a woman or I was good looking at this and that. Men appreciate women that have qualities and value and ethics. And when you do that, a man will respect you, not as a sex object, but as a professional next to you.
Absolutely.
That's what I leave to women, because part of that DEI too, where women, are involved in the picture. No, if you're going to hire me, you have to hire me, like Otto say, for my values. That's all that matters.
That's correct. And just to add to that, Marin, real quick, women bring their own superpower into the room, and I want them to harness that. I make sure that in my company that they have the latitude to use their intuition and to use their skills, because if a woman is able to match their skills with their intuition, she is a high-powered weapon, and I want to be able to have that ability. As far as mentors go, I had a lot of mentors, but I have a lot of admiration for some of the women in my family, which were tremendous inspirations in my life, and I admire and that in women. And again, if they can match their intuition with their skills and what they've learned, they have a superpower above and beyond men. And
absolutely. I think together when you join those two superpower, a man and a woman, values, is really, really amazing. And I think that it is just it is amazing to see the journey from a little girl and little boys to be exiles, to be refugee, to come to this country, to go to college, to be successful in business, to the moon and back, and at the same time to have so much respect for one another, and none of us had to get a DEI class or program to get there.
No, I actually wanted to make sure that I was not looked at as a DEI hire, because that would very much cast a shadow on my skill set, because everyone would then say, oh, this is the token minority DEI hire. I did not want that label, and I did not want that. That would diminish my skill set, my ability, and my value.
Yes.
So
I can't agree more, Otto. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll tell you, still, the learning is a never stop. I think a lot of companies and leadership fail today because they stop at some point learning or surrounding with the right people. I'm extremely appreciative of surrounding myself with both of you. I learned so much talking with both of you. Mary, you give me so much fantastic coaching in businesses, and talking with Otto I take notes when I talk to Otto. You know, I'm not kidding you. I mean, this man has such an incredible vision of business.
He does.
So it's like I feel that surrounding myself people like you make me a lot better. But one thing I tell people, I don't care you're 40, 50, 60, 80. The moment you stop learning is the moment your company and you as a person is done. The failure comes right at it, you know, and that's something extremely critical. You know, you got to continue to do it, continue to enhance your company, bring in new technology or new business approaches, new visions. You know, change is the only constant, and same is learning, you know. So, but I think that's one thing that we learned since that day that Otto jumped in a boat and you and I came in airplanes all the way. We learned that day when we landed on the other side of that pond that the only thing we had going for us is you better study, you better learn, you better get good at it, because the competition is brutal. You know, these people here is good, better than you, but you have a huge disadvantage. You don't even speak the language. You cannot read it. And I will leave one last thing to say. You know, when we were talking about people in your family, although I believe Cuban mothers are a special dimension for what they went through with the kids. I mean, educating us here, giving us directions. I remember my mother sitting with me with the dictionary, you know, translating books, you know, big books, you know, science book, chemistry books, all this stuff. I didn't speak in English, you know, and giving us that sense of hey, you're gonna do good. They're always very, very positive, you know.
That's one of the things for women, you know. That's one of our superpowers for women. Not only we are really
right.
amazing, different things that complement men, but at the same time, we're mothers. Mm-hmm. And we leave legacies behind that are very, very important for both men and women. 100%. And I'm like you. I mean, in my backpack, the first item in my backpack, my hero, the hero of my story is my mom. Because I would have never left Cuba if she didn't have the courage as a single woman to come here and clean houses for me. You know, babysit so that I could go to college. What a woman is that?
Right.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that, with you, Luis. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the information I sent you some time ago is one of the first people that flew an airplane was a woman.
Yes, yes.
And she was Cuban.
I saw that, and I'm going to put that on my book for sure. The third way.
Yeah. So
because
we got 340, 350 million people in the United States. Half of them are women. The other half are men, and all of them combined, they have a completely different background, minority, whatever. Just imagine if we steer everybody to do what is best for the country, what is best for life, people. We know separation, no limitation, no dissecting people because the way that they believe and trust and the look and anything, where the people focus on success instead of focusing in in all this time in trying to fulfill a program called DEI, which I'm telling you, that program, it's been around since 1960. Now it became a political tool. It became a brainwash tool. It's a tool with zero goals, zero understanding. People say know what the purpose is, and people honestly, it's just fatigue of it. It's saturated by this thing. This is entertainment. You go to company with some people is in this topic for probably 60% of the day at work. And it completely eliminates the possibility of these people to accomplish things that will make them extremely successful. Sure. It's kind of a deviation. I don't know how to explain it. But I in talking from the engineering point of view, as an engineer, we are not wired to succeed based on some quota or some number. We're wired to succeed because we design the best circuit, we design the best airplane, the best medical equipment, the best car, the best business. That's what drives all this group of people. So it is for all those people is something that is abnormal. It's really not in the DNA. But then you have a group of people trying to force it down your throat, and you start to create this fatigue, training after training, all this stuff. I rather companies focus, like Otto said. Otto had those 3 rules what DEI should be, in focus.
Yeah, can you repeat that again, Otto? I thought that was so good.
Yeah. So
let's leave this conversation. Let's leave it with those 3 things.
So I mean, my motto is always skills over demographic, and it's going to be diversity in your superpower. So I want diverse superpowers in my company. I want people that bring their uniqueness. I want women and men that bring their own superpower, and I want them to have the latitude to explore that superpower and to, basically allow me to exploit it and allow the company to exploit it, because that rises all ships. That's the tide that rises all ships. As far as equity goes, is I want everyone to have the same equal opportunity as far as the starting point, right? Yeah. So equality of opportunity for one. So in my firm, everyone has an opportunity to create value. And as far as inclusivity goes, is where does your value come from? How do you include your value into the company? And how do we all exploit that formula to bring all ships together? Like I said, capitalism only sees the color of value, only sees the gender of value, only sees value creation. And I want to make sure that and that everyone has the same, equal opportunity. And in this country, this is the only country that allows you to have that equality of opportunity. This is the only country. I've traveled the world, and in other countries, if you're not born to the right last name, you're not going to have that. You're going to have a starting line much, much further than someone who doesn't have the right last name.
Yes.
And as far as equality of opportunity goes, this is the only country where you can actually outwork the next guy and have that latitude of success.
Yes.
And work is the only differentiator.
This is so good. I like to leave it at this.
Excellent.
Because this is so good, and it's a really a summary of our stories. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I admire you so much. I give thanks to God for putting you in my life.
Same here.
And we continue to work together
Thank
all
you.
the way to the end.
I appreciate you guys.
Bye-bye.